Hi, this is Glenda, and today I'm going to show you how to make this creamsicle soap. This is the sketch I made for it, or what I plan to achieve. And I'm reviewing the recipe to make sure I have everything I need. I'm going to put a link to this in the description box in case you want to see. I will be using the fragrance Dreamsicle from Lone Star Candle Supply. A little bit of 24K gold mica that I pre-mix in some oil. I will also be using Satsuma orange for the top part of the soap, the one that will be piped with this tip. And this is the mold that I will be using, just a square silicone liner in a wooden box. The first thing that I'm going to prepare is the vanilla stabilizer, and I'm doing it from scratch. I will be using sodium thiosulfate pentahydrate crystals. That is a mouthful, which is supposedly the main component of most vanilla stabilizers in the market. I read this in a blog post that I'm going to include in the description box below. The crystals do need to be dissolved in the water before using them, so that's the water that I'm measuring right now. Now, if I don't use a vanilla stabilizer in this soup, this is what it would look like, which is a very deep brown since it has about 12% of vanillin in it. The water is at room temperature, and I'm only taking the temperature, which is 74 Fahrenheit or 23 Celsius, because I have the suspicion that the thiosulfate makes the temperature drop. So I want to compare and see if that is true. I am aware that most vanilla stabilizers don't last, meaning that over time the soap will start turning brown again. And that will be okay. I'm mostly curious about it, and I also want to, if not eliminate the browning, at least diminish it so that the design can be seen better and that I don't have a lot of dark brown soap scum. Also, most vanilla stabilizers tend to cause acceleration in the soap. So this is something that I'm mindful of, and I will be working fast to create my design. I stirred them into the water until they were nearly dissolved. At some point, I started feeling as if the temperature of the water was dropping, so I took it again, and as you can see, it had come down to 15 Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit from the 72 or 74 that they were previously. I will also be using rosemary oil resin, which is a natural preservative to help prevent oxidation of the oils. And since vanillin discoloration is a result of the oxidation, hopefully it will help with that as well. I only need a very small amount, so I'm actually going to bring out my smaller scale to measure it. I'm adding it to the oils directly, and to disperse it I'm going to give it a quick blend with a stick blender. The oils have already been warmed up. They are at 105 Fahrenheit or 40 Celsius. And the light water solution should be at room temperature of 24 Celsius or 75 Fahrenheit. I am adding the light water solution to the oils, and first I'm just going to stir them with a spatula before introducing the stick blender. You may notice that the oils seem to have an orange tone, and this is because of the rosemary oil resin. I'm blending it until it reaches emulsion and it creates a light coat on the shaft of the stick blender that doesn't break apart. I'm going to separate a portion of the soap batter for the top, which will be about 13 ounces. To the rest, I'm going to add the sodium thiosulfate, and I'm just going to stir it in. I am adding the fragrance to this remaining portion, and now I'm also going to separate a smaller amount to create the shape of the cone, of the ice cream cone, which will be about 13 ounces as well. Now, to create the shape of the cone, I'm going to be using 2 corrugated plastic sheets that I'm showing on screen, and they will go in the mold in the middle. To this portion, I'm adding the gold mica because I wanted this to be the color of the cone of the ice cream. Later, I realized this didn't matter as much. In hindsight, I think I would have chosen a darker color now. But for now, I'm ready to start pouring it. I noticed that it wasn't as thick as I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be at a noticeable trace, and it still wasn't there. So I blended it quickly just to see if that will make it come to at least light trace for the pouring. Once this was achieved, I started pouring the uncolored soap butter on the sides of the corrugated cardboard that was in the middle and that I'm holding together. And I'm trying to sort of pour it in an even way on each side. I'm also pressing down on the two pieces of cardboard a little bit so that the batter doesn't seep at the bottom of the mold. Once I was almost done with it, it wasn't quite full, and I didn't want it to be full because I need the room for the cone in the middle. So once I was done with that part, I opened the corrugated cardboard pieces slightly, and I started pouring the golden color portion, and it naturally forced the boards to open up, and then I pulled them up in the same position, so in a diagonal angle. I'm now going back to the portion of soap that I reserved at the beginning, and I'm adding the Satsuma orange to it. Sadly for me, it seemed to have faded quite a bit, this portion, but I colored some of it with the neon orange pigment from Nurture Soap, and then another portion I left it uncolored. So after blending the color in, I just let it rest, and I came back after an hour to see if it had thickened up enough to be able to be piped on top of the soap. But even after waiting an hour, it wasn't much thick. This is pretty much what it looked like. They were still at light or medium trace, but not thick enough to serve as piping. So I decided to use the stick blender, even though I knew this will introduce a lot of air bubbles because they were such small containers. However, I figured that usually regular frosting, like cake frosting, has a lot of air built into it. And since this is not an integral part of the soap, it's mainly the decoration on top, I think it'll be okay if there are some air bubbles in it. So I put this in the freezer for about 30 minutes to be able to unmold it. Oh yeah, it looks like an ice cream cone. So I might do a little pattern there, maybe. But anyway, I'll show you pictures of how they do as the days go by.